The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Floating through this emptiness were 7 massive ships, but they were not moving the way they should. They drifted like dead leaves on a pond, powerless and silent. These ships belonged to the Vakran people, a race of tall reptilian beings who had traveled the stars for thousands of years. Now they were stuck, far from home, with no way to call for help. Commander Zelith stood on the bridge of the largest ship. His green scales caught the dim emergency lighting as he watched the screens go dark one by one. 3 weeks had passed since the solar storm hit them. The radiation had burned through their navigation systems and destroyed their main engines. They had sent out distress signals, but they were in an empty part of space. No one came here. No one would find them. The crew was scared, though they tried not to show it. The Vakran were warriors, proud and strong, but even warriors feel fear when death approaches slowly in the cold vacuum of space. Food supplies were running low. The air recyclers were failing. Some of the crew had already grown weak from the stress and poor conditions. Zelith watched his people work at their stations, trying to fix systems that could not be fixed without proper parts. He felt the weight of command pressing down on him. These were his people, his responsibility, and he was failing them. Then something happened that changed everything. The sensor officer looked up from his console, his eyes wide with surprise. His name was Corvin, and he had been staring at the same dead screens for days. Now something was moving on those screens. Something was out there. Corvin's voice shook slightly as he spoke. "Commander, I am detecting ships. Multiple vessels approaching our position." Zelith felt his heart sink. Pirates. It had to be pirates. In their current state, the Vakran fleet was helpless. They could not run and they could not fight. Any hostile force could simply board them and take whatever they wanted. Or worse, simply destroy them and leave no witnesses. He forced his voice to remain steady. "How many ships? Can you identify them?" Corvin worked at his console, trying to pull more information from the dying systems. 5 ships, Commander. The design is unknown. I have never seen ships like these before. They are broadcasting on multiple frequencies. "Let me hear it," Zelith ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. At first the words made no sense. The language was completely foreign, unlike anything in the Vakran database. But their translation computers were still working, slowly breaking down the strange sounds into meaning. A male voice came through, speaking with a calm and friendly tone. "This is Captain Lucas Grant of the Earth vessel Horizon. We have picked up your distress beacon. Do you need help?" Zelith looked at his second-in-command, an older Vakran named Vorin. Neither of them had ever heard of Earth. This species was completely unknown to them. That could be good or bad. Unknown species were unpredictable. Some were friendly, others were not, but they had no choice. Without help, everyone on these ships would die within a few weeks. "Open a channel," Zelith said. "Let me speak to them." Corvin worked his controls, then nodded. Zelith spoke clearly into the communication system. "This is Commander Zelith of the Vakran fleet. We are damaged and in need of assistance. We cannot repair our ships with our current resources." The response came quickly. "Understood, Commander. We are moving into position around your fleet now. Please do not be alarmed. We are here to help, not to harm. We will send over engineering teams to assess the damage. Can we get permission to board?" Zelith hesitated. Allowing unknown aliens onto Vakran ships went against every security protocol. But what choice did they have? "Permission granted," he said. "But I warn you, if this is some kind of trick, we still have some weapons functional." That was a lie, but the humans did not need to know that. There was a sound that the translator marked as laughter. "No tricks, Commander. We are just passing through this sector and happened to pick up your distress call. Hang tight. Help is on the way." Over the next few hours, Zelith watched on the view screens as the 5 human ships moved into formation around the Vakran fleet. They were smaller than Vakran vessels, and their design was strange. The ships looked solid and practical, not elegant like Vakran craft. They had visible weapon systems, but nothing too threatening. These were not warships. Then Captain Grant appeared on the view screen for the first time. Zelith studied the alien carefully. Grant was a human male, probably middle-aged by the gray in his hair. His skin was smooth and pale, not scaled. His eyes were small compared to Vakran eyes, but they were bright and alert. He wore a simple blue uniform and smiled when he spoke. That smile was interesting. Humans showed their teeth when they were happy, apparently. For Vakran, showing teeth was a sign of aggression. Cultural differences were always fascinating. Commander Zelith, Grant said warmly, we have completed our scans of your ships. You took a lot of damage from that solar flare. Your main engines are burned out and your power systems are failing. The good news is that we can help. We have spare power cells that we can modify to work with your systems. Our engineers are good at making things work. Zelith felt a tiny spark of hope. Why are you doing this? You do not know us. We could be enemies. We could be dangerous. Grant's smile did not fade. You are in trouble and you need help. That is all we need to know. Where we come from. There is an old saying from when humans first sailed the oceans. If you see a ship in distress, you help them. It does not matter who they are or where they come from. You help because it is the right thing to do. We cannot pay you, Zelith said. We have nothing to offer in trade. We are not asking for payment, Grant replied. We are asking to be good neighbors. Even if we just met. Even if we live on opposite sides of the galaxy, right now we are neighbors. And neighbors help each other. Zelith was quiet for a moment. This was unlike anything he had experienced before. The galaxy was usually not a kind place. Most species looked out for themselves first. Trust was rare. Compassion for strangers was even rarer. Very well, Captain Grant, Zelith said. We accept your help. Thank you. No thanks needed, Grant said. We will start work immediately. My chief engineer is organizing the teams now. We will get you moving again, Commander. I promise you that. As the communication ended, Zelith sat back in his command chair. Around him, the crew was talking quietly among themselves. They were confused but hopeful. These humans were strange, but they seemed genuine. Vorin leaned close to Zelith and whispered, Do you trust them, Commander? Zelith watched the human ships on the view screen, holding protective positions around the Vakran fleet. I do not know yet. But what choice do we have? If they wanted to harm us, they could have already done so. Let us see if their actions match their words. Within the hour, the first human shuttle arrived at the flagship. Zelith went to the docking bay to meet them personally. When the airlock opened, he got his first look at humans in person. They were small, much smaller than Vakran. The tallest one barely reached Zelith's chest. They wore work suits and carried tools and equipment. Leading them was a young female with dark hair pulled back from her face. She stepped forward confidently, not showing any fear despite being surrounded by beings twice her size. Commander Zelith? She asked. I am Lieutenant Sophie Martinez, Chief Engineer. My team is ready to start repairs. If you could show us to your engine room, we will get started right away. Zelith studied the small human who spoke with such confidence. Follow me, Lieutenant. I hope you know what you are doing. Sophie smiled. So do I, Commander. So do I. The engine room of the Vakran flagship was massive. Giant machines lined the walls, all connected by thick cables and glowing conduits. But nothing was glowing anymore. Everything was dark and cold. The solar flare had killed this room just like it had killed the rest of the ship. Sophie Martinez walked through the engine room slowly, her scanning device in hand. Behind her came 5 more human engineers, all looking around with wide eyes. The Vakran technology was far more advanced than anything humans had. These aliens had been traveling space for thousands of years. Humans had only been out here for a few decades, but Sophie was not intimidated. She had been fixing broken machines since she was a child. Her father had been a mechanic on a mining station, and he had taught her that all machines followed the same basic rules. Energy had to flow. Heat had to be controlled. Parts had to connect properly. The details might be different, but the principles were always the same. Zelith stood at the entrance to the engine room, watching the humans work. Next to him was Varrock, the Vakran chief engineer. Varrock was old and experienced, and he did not look happy about aliens touching his engines. Your technology is primitive compared to ours, Varrock said bluntly. How do you expect to repair systems you cannot even understand? Sophie heard this and turned around. She walked back to face Varrock, looking up at the tall alien without any fear in her eyes. You are right, she said calmly. We do not understand everything about your technology, but we understand how energy works. We understand how machines work. And more importantly, we understand how to fix things when we do not have the right parts. Varrock made a sound that might have been a snort. Fixing things without the right parts? That is impossible. Then you have never been desperate enough, Sophie replied with a small smile. Let us see what we can do. She turned back to the engines and started giving orders to her team. They spread out through the room, scanning different systems and taking notes. Sophie moved to the main power conduit and studied it carefully. The damage was bad. Really bad. The solar radiation had melted circuits and fused connections. Some parts were completely destroyed, but some parts were still good. That was something. Okay, Sophie said to her team. The main problem is the power distribution network. It is completely fried, but the backup systems are still functional. If we can reroute power through the secondary lines, we can at least get partial power to critical systems. One of her engineers, a young man named Peter Chen, shook his head. The secondary lines cannot handle that much power. They will overload. Not if we reduce the power output, Sophie replied. We do not need full power. We just need enough to get the navigation system and basic engines working. They can limp to a repair station. Varrock had been listening to this conversation. He stepped forward, his interest clearly growing despite his skepticism. The secondary power lines were never designed for primary distribution. The power loss would be enormous. Efficiency would drop by 60%. Sophie looked at him and shrugged. 60% of something is better than 100% of nothing. Right now you have zero power. Even inefficient power is better than that. Varrock stared at her for a long moment. Then surprisingly he laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound. You humans are very practical. Not elegant, but practical. We learned to be practical because we had to be, Sophie said. Humans have been fixing broken things with whatever we had available for our entire history. It is kind of our specialty. Over the next 12 hours, the humans worked alongside the Vakran engineers. At first, the Vakran just watched, not really helping. But as time went on, they began to see that these small aliens actually knew what they were doing. Sophie's team asked questions constantly, wanting to understand how each system worked. When the Vakran explained something, the humans listened carefully and took notes. Sophie found a burned-out coupling that controlled power flow to the main engines. She held it up, showing it to Varrock. Do you have replacements for this? Varrock examined it and shook his head. No, that component is only manufactured on our home world. Without it, the engine cannot function properly. Sophie turned the component over in her hands, thinking hard. What if we bypass it completely? We could run a secondary power line through this junction here, and reroute everything through your backup distribution node. Varrock's eyes widened. He pulled up a holographic schematic and studied it. That would work, he admitted slowly. But the power loss would be significant, and it would put a lot of stress on systems that were not designed for that kind of load. How long would it last? Sophie asked. Perhaps a few weeks, maybe a month if we are careful. And how long would it take to reach a proper repair station? Varrock calculated quickly. 2 weeks at reduced speed. Sophie smiled. Then we have enough time. It does not need to be perfect. It just needs to work long enough to get you to safety. Varrock looked at this small human female with new respect. You think like a survivor. All humans do, Sophie replied. We come from a planet that tried to kill us in about 100 different ways. We learned to adapt or die. Mostly we adapted. The work continued through the day and into the night, though in space there was no real day or night. The humans barely stopped to rest. They ate quick meals while working and took short breaks only when absolutely necessary. Sophie seemed to run on pure determination, moving from system to system, solving problems as they appeared. At one point, they needed a specific type of connector to join two incompatible systems. The Vakran did not have one, and neither did the humans. So Sophie and Peter spent 2 hours designing a new connector and fabricating it using a 3D printer they had brought from their ship. It was not pretty, but it worked. Varrock watched this process with amazement. You just invented a new component. We invented a temporary solution, Sophie corrected. When you get to a real repair facility, they will replace all of this with proper parts. But for now, this will keep you alive. By the end of the first day, 3 of the 7 Vakran ships had partial power restored. Lights came on for the first time in weeks. Air recyclers started working again. Computers booted up. The Vakran crew members cheered when they saw their systems coming back to life. Captain Grant visited the flagship that evening. He met with Zelith in the commander's quarters. Zelith offered him a seat, which Grant took gratefully. The human captain looked tired but satisfied. Your Lieutenant Martinez is impressive, Zelith said. She has accomplished more in one day than my engineers thought possible. Grant smiled. Sophie is one of the best. She grew up on a space station that was constantly breaking down. She learned to fix anything with whatever was available. That kind of experience is invaluable. Captain Grant, I must ask again. Why are you doing this? You have given us parts from your own ships. Your people are working to exhaustion. You are putting yourselves at risk to help complete strangers. This makes no sense. Grant leaned back in his chair and looked thoughtful. Commander, about 400 years ago, humans started sailing across the oceans on our planet. It was dangerous. Ships sank. People died. But sailors developed a code. If you saw another ship in trouble, you helped them. It did not matter if they were friends or enemies. It did not matter if they were from your country or not. You helped because you might be the one needing help next time. He paused, then continued. When we finally got to space, we brought that code with us. The universe is big and dangerous. We are all tiny and fragile out here. If we do not help each other, who will? What kind of galaxy would this be if everyone just ignored each other's suffering? Zelith was quiet for a moment. The Vakran have always believed in strength. We take care of our own people, but we do not involve ourselves in the problems of others. Self-reliance is our highest virtue. That is fine when things are going well, Grant said gently. But right now, self-reliance is not enough. Right now you need help, and we are happy to give it. But what do you gain from this? Zelith asked, still confused. Grant thought about it. Maybe we gain a friend. Maybe someday, somewhere, another human ship will be in trouble and you will remember this moment. Or maybe we gain nothing at all. But that is okay too. Doing the right thing is its own reward. Zelith felt something shift inside him. He had spent his entire life believing that the galaxy was a harsh place where only the strong survived. These humans were showing him something different. They were showing him that kindness could exist between strangers. That compassion was not a weakness but a strength. Captain Grant, Zelith said slowly, I am beginning to understand why your people have survived. You do not just adapt to challenges. You help each other through them. Grant stood up and extended his hand. Zelith knew this was a human gesture of respect. He reached out and grasped Grant's hand firmly. Thank you, Captain, Zelith said. Truly. You are welcome, Commander, Grant replied. Now get some rest.
Tomorrow we will work on getting the rest of your fleet powered up.
In a week you will be on your way home. As Grant left, Zelith sat alone in his quarters. He thought about everything he had witnessed today. These humans were remarkable. They were small and their technology was less advanced, but they had something that many advanced species had lost. They had not forgotten how to care about others. They had not become so focused on their... 3 days had passed since the humans arrived. The repair work was going well. 5 of the 7 Vakran ships now had power, and the engineers were working on the last 2. The Vikran crew was starting to believe they might actually survive this disaster. Hope was returning to faces that had been filled with despair. But then a new problem appeared. Varrock came to find Zelith on the bridge. The old engineer looked worried, which was never a good sign. Zelith had learned that Varrock only showed concern when something was truly serious. Commander, we have a situation, Varrock said quietly. The food supplies are critical. We have enough for maybe 4 more days. After that, the crew will start to starve. Zelith felt his heart sink. He had been so focused on getting the ships working that he had not paid enough attention to the supply situation. It was a terrible oversight. How did we let it get this bad? Zelith asked. The rationing has been strict, but we have been stranded for almost a month now. Varrock explained. The supplies were never meant to last this long. And with the crew working hard on repairs, they are eating more than usual. They need the energy, Zelith nodded grimly. Contact Captain Grant, we need to discuss this. Within an hour, a meeting was arranged aboard the human ship Horizon. Zelith took a shuttle across, accompanied by Varrock and Vorin. It was Zelith's first time on a human vessel, and he found it fascinating. Everything was smaller and more compact than on Vakran ships. The corridors were narrow and the ceilings were low, forcing the tall Vakran to duck their heads. But everything was clean and well-maintained. They were led to a conference room where Captain Grant was waiting, along with Sophie Martinez and another human named Kyle Patterson. Patterson was Grant's second in command, a serious man with gray hair and sharp eyes. Grant gestured to the seats, which were too small for the Vakran. The humans quickly brought in larger chairs, apologizing for the inconvenience. It was a small gesture, but it showed thoughtfulness. Thank you for meeting with us, Captain, Zelith began. We have a new problem. Our food supplies are running out. Grant looked at Patterson, who pulled up some information on a tablet. We figured that might be an issue, Patterson said. We have been monitoring your supply levels. Based on your crew size and nutritional needs, you have about 4 days left. Can your ships provide food? Vorin asked. Sophie shook her head. Our food would not work for you. Your biology is completely different from ours. What we eat would probably make you sick. You need specific nutrients that our food does not have. The nearest station that would have Vakran food supplies is 2 weeks away, Patterson continued. That is too long. You would run out of food long before you got there. Zealith felt despair creeping back. They had fixed the ships only to face death by starvation. It seemed cruel, but Grant was smiling slightly. However, there is another option. There is a trading post about 8 days from here. It is a big place that serves multiple species. They stock supplies for dozens of different races. According to our database, they should have what you need. 8 days is still too long, Varrock pointed out. We would run out of food in 4. That is why we are not all going, Grant said. 3 of our ships will make the supply run. The Horizon and the Denver will stay here with your fleet. We can make the trip in 4 days each way. That gives us 8 days total, which is cutting it close, but we can do it. Zealith was stunned. You would split your fleet? That would leave us all vulnerable. We will be fine, Grant assured him. This is a quiet sector. The chances of running into trouble are low, and even if something does happen, 2 human ships and 7 Vakran ships can handle most threats. But the cost, Zealith protested. Food for over 300 Vakran crew members for several weeks would be extremely expensive. We have no money that you would accept. We have no trade goods. We have nothing to offer. Grant waved his hand dismissively. We will figure out the payment later. Right now, your people need to eat. That is what matters. Sophie leaned forward, her tablet in hand. Varrock gave us a complete list of your nutritional requirements. We know exactly what you need. The trading post has it all in stock. We checked. You would go into debt for us? Zealith could not believe what he was hearing. You would spend your own resources to feed people you do not even know? Grant looked at him seriously. Commander, let me ask you something. If the situation was reversed, if we were the ones stranded and starving, would you help us? Zealith opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. A week ago he would have said no without hesitation. The Vakran did not help outsiders. That was not their way. But after watching these humans work tirelessly for days after seeing their kindness and generosity, something had changed in him. Yes, Zealith said quietly. I believe I would help you. Grant smiled warmly. Then this is not charity. This is us investing in the kind of galaxy we want to live in. A galaxy where people help each other. Where kindness is normal, not rare. Kyle Patterson stood up. I will lead the supply run personally. The Anchorage, Seattle, and Portland will depart within 2 hours. We will be back in 8 days with everything you need. We are also adding some extra items, Sophie added, looking at her tablet. Entertainment media compatible with your systems, some recreational equipment, basic medical supplies. Things to help with morale. That is not necessary, Varine said. We only need food. Being stranded is stressful enough, Sophie replied. Being bored while stranded is even worse. Trust us, a little entertainment goes a long way. Besides, we have extra room in the cargo holds. Might as well fill them with useful things. Zealith felt emotion rising in his chest. These humans kept finding ways to be kind. They did not just solve problems. They thought about comfort and dignity, too. They treated the Vakran not as charity cases, but as equals who deserved respect. I do not know what to say, Zealith admitted. Thank you seems inadequate. Thank you is perfect, Grant said warmly. Now let us get those ships loaded and moving. Time is important here. The 3 human ships departed 2 hours later, just as promised. Zealith watched them jump to faster-than-light travel from the bridge of his flagship. Part of him worried about them. They were risking a lot for strangers. Over the next 8 days, life on the Vakran fleet settled into a routine. The repairs continued, with Sophie and her team working alongside Vakran engineers. The 2 remaining human ships stayed close, keeping watch. Captain Grant visited the flagship every day to check on progress and share meals with Zealith. The 2 commanders were becoming friends. On the 4th day, the food situation became critical. Rations were cut to barely enough to survive. The crew was hungry and weak, but they did not complain. They had hope now. Help was coming. On the 8th day, right on schedule, the 3 human ships returned. Kyle Patterson's voice came over the communication system, sounding tired but satisfied. Vakran flagship, this is Commander Patterson. We are back with the supplies. requesting permission to begin transfer. Zealith felt relief wash over him. Permission granted, Commander. Welcome back. The cargo transfer took several hours. The human ships had brought massive amounts of food, all specifically chosen for Vakran biology. There was enough to last for months, not just weeks. They had also brought medical supplies, entertainment systems, spare parts that might be useful, and dozens of other items. Sophie came aboard the flagship to oversee the transfer. She found Zealith in the cargo bay staring at the mountains of supplies. This is far more than we need, Zealith said. This must have cost a fortune. Sophie shrugged. Patterson said the trading post gave us a bulk discount when they heard what the supplies were for. Apparently, they respect species who help others. They knocked off about 30% of the cost. Still, this is an enormous expense. It is an investment, Sophie repeated Grant's words. Besides, your people needed it. What else matters? That night, the Vakran crew had their first full meal in weeks. The mood throughout the fleet was joyful. People laughed and talked, their energy returning with their full stomachs. In the flagship's mess hall, Varrock approached Sophie, who was eating with her human team. Lieutenant Martinez, Varrock said formally. I wanted to apologize. Sophie looked up surprised. Apologize for what? When you first came aboard, I did not believe you could help us. I thought your technology was too primitive, your knowledge too limited. I was wrong. You and your people have saved us. Not just our ships, but our lives. Sophie smiled and stood up, though she still had to look up to meet Varrock's eyes. You do not need to apologize. I would have been skeptical too. But we all learn from each other, right? Your engineers taught us a lot about advanced power systems. We taught you about improvisation and creative problem solving. Everybody wins. Varrock made a gesture that indicated deep respect in Vakran culture. You are wise for one so young. Your people are fortunate to have you. And your people are fortunate to have you, Sophie replied. You were willing to learn from aliens with less advanced technology. That takes humility. Not every engineer would have that. Later, Zealith stood in his quarters looking out at the human ships. They were still there, still watching over the Vakran fleet. They had spent 8 days, enormous resources, and put themselves at risk, all for strangers. Vorin entered the quarters and stood beside him. The humans are remarkable, Vorin. 9 days had passed since the humans first arrived. The Vakran fleet was almost ready to travel again. 6 ships had full power, and the 7th was nearly complete. The crew was well fed and healthy. Spirits were high. Everyone believed the worst was behind them. Then the sensors detected something that changed everything. Corvin was at his station on the bridge when the alert came through. His eyes went wide as he read the display. Commander, we have ships approaching. 3 vessels moving fast. They are not responding to our hails. Zealith moved to stand behind Corvin, looking at the sensor data. His blood went cold. The ship configurations matched a species he knew too well. Krellian raiders. The Krellians were pirates and scavengers who preyed on weak targets throughout this region of space. They were brutal and merciless. A fleet of damaged Vakran ships would be an easy target for them. The Vakran had always defended themselves through strength, but right now they had no strength. Their weapon systems were still offline. They were defenseless. Sound the alarm, Zealith ordered. All crew to interior compartments. If they board us, we fall back to the secure areas. It was a desperate plan. The Krellians would probably just take what they wanted and leave the Vakran to die in space. But it was all Zealith could think of. Then Captain Grant's face appeared on the view screen. He looked calm but serious. We see them, Commander. All human ships are moving to defensive positions. Get your people to safety. We will handle this. Captain, no, Zealith protested. Your ships are not warships. You cannot fight raiders. You should run while you can. Grant's expression hardened. We are not running, Commander. You are under our protection. That means something. You will be killed, Zealith said desperately. There are 3 of them and 5 of you, but their ships are military vessels. Yours are not. This is suicide. Let us worry about that, Grant replied. Just keep your people safe. That is an order. The transmission ended. Zealith watched helplessly as the 5 human ships moved into position. They spread out in a defensive formation, placing themselves directly between the raiders and the Vakran fleet. It was a brave gesture, but Zealith feared it would also be a fatal one. On board the Horizon, Grant stood on his bridge, surrounded by his crew. Status report. Shields are at maximum, reported the tactical officer, a woman named Lisa Park. All weapon systems are armed and ready. Missiles loaded. They are not slowing down, said the navigation officer. They are coming straight at us, Grant nodded. They think we are easy targets. Let us show them they are wrong. All ships weapons free. Fire when ready. The Krellian raiders opened fire first. Bright plasma bolts streaked through space, slamming into the shields of the Horizon and Denver. The shields flared with light but held firm. Return fire, Grant ordered calmly. The human ships unleashed their weapons. Missiles launched from their hulls, followed by laser fire. The Krellians had not expected such an aggressive response. One of the raider ships took a direct hit to its engine section, causing an explosion that sent it spinning off course. Target the lead ship, Grant commanded. Focus fire! The 5 human ships concentrated their attacks on a single Krellian vessel. The combined firepower overwhelmed its shields. Explosions rippled across its hull as systems failed. The ship tried to retreat, but it was badly damaged. The remaining 2 Krellian ships realized they had underestimated their opponents. They adjusted their tactics, splitting up to attack from different angles. Plasma fire filled the space between the fleets. On the Vakran flagship, Sophie Martinez was still in the engine room with Varrock and his team. She heard the alert sirens and felt the ship shake as the battle raged outside. We need to help them, Sophie said urgently. Is there any way we can get weapons online? Varrock shook his head. Impossible. The weapon systems are completely dead. We have no targeting computers, no power flow to the turrets. It would take days to repair. Sophie was thinking fast. What if we do not use your targeting computers? Can you fire the weapons manually? Varrock stared at her. Manually? That has not been done in centuries. Without computer assistance, the calculations required would be enormous. Hitting a moving target in space without computer targeting is nearly impossible. But is it possible? Sophie pressed. Can the turrets be controlled manually? Technically, yes. There are manual override controls, but you would need to calculate velocity, distance, relative motion, trajectory, all while both ships are moving. The margin for error would be huge. Sophie pulled out her tablet. I can do the calculations. I just need you to give me control of one turret. Varrock looked at her like she was crazy. You want to manually target and fire a weapon you have never used before? At a ship moving thousands of meters per second while we are also moving? Yes, Sophie said simply. Can you do it or not? Varrock hesitated for only a moment, then began working at his console. You humans are completely insane. But at this point, what do we have to lose? I am routing control of the dorsal turret to your tablet. The manual firing controls are being activated now. Sophie's fingers flew across her tablet screen. She pulled up sensor data showing the positions and velocities of all the ships in the battle. She started writing code, building a simple targeting program using basic physics equations. Velocity, acceleration, distance, time to target. The calculations were complex but not impossible. Turret is under your control, Varrock announced. Sophie took a deep breath. Through her tablet, she could see what the turret was seeing. One of the Krellian ships was making an attack run on the human ship Seattle. The raider was focused on the Seattle, and not paying attention to the supposedly helpless Vakran fleet. Sophie adjusted the turret angle, using her calculations to predict where the Krellian ship would be in 3 seconds. She double-checked her math. This had to be perfect. Firing, she said. The turret fired a bolt of plasma energy. It streaked through space, passing about 50 meters to the right of the Krellian ship. Miss, Varrock said unnecessarily. I see that, Sophie muttered, already adjusting her calculations. She had not accounted properly for the turret's rotation speed. She updated her program and tried again. The second shot missed by about 30 meters. The third shot clipped the edge of the Krellian ship's shields, causing them to flicker. You almost hit it, Varrock said, his voice filled with disbelief. You are actually getting closer. Sophie was completely focused now. She updated her program again, fine-tuning the calculations. The Krellian ship was starting to notice the shots coming from the Vakran flagship. It began evasive maneuvers. Hold still, Sophie whispered to the enemy ship. She predicted its likely movement pattern and adjusted her aim. The fourth shot hit. The plasma bolt struck the Krellian ship's weakened shields at the same moment that a missile from the Seattle hit from the other side. The combined impact broke through the shields completely. The plasma bolt punched into the raiders' weapon systems, causing a chain reaction of explosions. The Krellian ship's weapons went offline. It was effectively out of the fight. On the Horizon's bridge, Captain Grant saw what had happened. A smile crossed his face. Outstanding shooting from the Vakran flagship. All ships pressed the attack. The two remaining functional Krellian ships suddenly found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. One of their companions was crippled, another was barely functional, and the enemy they thought would be easy prey was fighting back hard. The humans showed no signs of backing down, and now even the damaged Vakran ships were fighting. The Krellian commander made the smart choice. He ordered a retreat. The two remaining raiders broke off and jumped to faster-than-light travel, abandoning their damaged companion ships. The disabled Krellian vessels sent immediate surrender signals. The battle was over. The humans had won. On the Vakran flagship, Sophie slumped against the wall, her hands shaking from adrenaline. She had just fired a weapon in combat for the first time in her life. She had helped destroy an enemy ship. The reality of it was just hitting her. Varrock placed a large hand gently on her shoulder. That was the most impressive thing I have ever seen. You calculated a targeting solution in your head and hit a moving target without any computer assistance. You are either a genius or completely insane. Sophie laughed weakly. Maybe both. Captain Grant's face appeared on the internal monitors throughout the ship. All ships stand down from combat alert. Well done, everyone. The threat is over. Zelith arrived in the engine room moments later. He looked at Sophie with an expression of awe and gratitude. You saved us, Lieutenant. That shot disabled their weapons at a critical moment. You turned the tide of the battle. Sophie stood up straight, trying to look more professional despite her shaking hands. I just did what I could, Commander. Your people would have done the same for us, would we? Zelith asked quietly. I am not sure we would have. But you did not hesitate. You put yourself in danger to protect us. Sophie met his eyes. Commander, when I was 6 years old, pirates attacked the station where I lived. My family was trapped. A merchant ship crew risked their lives to evacuate us. They had no reason to help. They were not soldiers. They were just ordinary people who decided that other people's lives mattered. I only exist because someone decided we were worth saving. How could I not do the same? Zelith felt something profound shift in his understanding. These humans did. 2 weeks had passed since the battle with the Krellian raiders. The Vakran fleet had traveled slowly but steadily toward civilization. All 7 ships were functional now, though they still limped along at reduced speed. The human ships stayed with them the entire way, keeping protective watch. Finally, they reached Telos Station, a massive trading hub that served as neutral ground for dozens of species. The station hung in space like a giant wheel, its lights welcoming after weeks in the dark void. For the Vakran crew, seeing the station felt like coming home after a long nightmare. A Vakran recovery fleet was already waiting at the station. They had received the long-range communications that the humans had helped restore and had rushed to meet their stranded people. Military ships, medical vessels, and supply transports filled the space around Telos Station. Zelith stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the recovery fleet on his screens. After weeks of darkness and despair, followed by the unexpected help from humans, he was about to rejoin his own people. He felt relief, gratitude, and something else. Sadness, perhaps. The last 2 weeks had changed him profoundly. He was not the same commander who had left Vakran space months ago. A transmission came through. The face of High Commander Vekran appeared on the view screen. Vekran was old and powerful, a legendary figure in Vakran military history. His scales were dark with age and his eyes were sharp and intelligent. Commander Zelith, Vekran said formally, "It is good to see you alive. Your report about these humans was extraordinary. I had to see them for myself." "High Commander, they saved us," Zelith said simply. "Without their help, everyone on these ships would be dead." "So I understand," Vekran replied. "I have reviewed your logs. These humans spent resources, risked their lives, and asked for nothing in return. This is highly unusual behavior. They call it being good neighbors," Zelith explained. "They believe that helping others is simply the right thing to do." Vekran was quiet for a moment. "I would like to meet these neighbors. Arrange a formal meeting on the station. I wish to thank them personally." Several hours later, the meeting took place in one of Telos Station's large conference rooms. The room was designed to accommodate multiple species, with adjustable furniture and life support. High Commander Vekran arrived with several senior officers and advisors. The Vakran delegation filled one side of the large table. Captain Grant arrived with his officers. Sophie Martinez was there, along with Kyle Patterson and the other ship commanders. The humans looked small compared to the imposing Vakran military leaders, but they walked in confidently. Vekran stood to greet them, studying the humans carefully. After a moment he spoke. "Captain Grant, I am High Commander Vekran of the Vakran Collective. On behalf of my people, I thank you for saving the lives of over 300 Vakran citizens. Your actions go far beyond what anyone would expect from strangers." Grant inclined his head respectfully. "High Commander, we did what anyone should do. Your people were in trouble. We were in a position to help. It was that simple." Vekran made a sound that might have been amusement. Simple. Yes, I suppose it would seem simple to humans. But most species in this galaxy would not have done what you did. Most would have passed by or demanded payment up front or simply taken advantage of helpless ships. He gestured to the chairs and everyone sat down. Vekran continued speaking. "The Vakran Collective is prepared to offer full compensation for all expenses you incurred. Replacement parts, food supplies, fuel costs. We will also provide a substantial reward for your services. Please name your price." Grant looked at his officers, then back at Vekran. "High Commander, we appreciate the offer, but we do not want payment." "We did not help you for money." Vekran's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then what do you want?" "Everyone wants something." Grant thought for a moment, then leaned forward. "Actually, there is something. Your people have been traveling the galaxy far longer than humans. You know routes we have not discovered. You know about dangers we have never encountered. You have met species we have never heard of. We would like to learn from your experience." "You want information?" Vekran asked, surprised. "Yes," Grant confirmed. "Star charts, cultural databases, diplomatic protocols. Things that will help us navigate this part of space safely. Things that will help us avoid making mistakes when we meet new species. That kind of knowledge is worth more than money to us." Sophie spoke up. "We are new to this region of the galaxy. We are like children trying to learn the rules of a very complex game. Your guidance would help us avoid causing problems or offending people accidentally." Vekran looked at Zelith, who nodded. "They are sincere, High Commander. They truly want knowledge, not wealth." Vekran sat back in his chair, considering. "This is most unusual, but I believe I am beginning to understand humans. You do not think in terms of immediate profit. You think in terms of long-term relationships and mutual benefit." "Exactly," Grant agreed. "We helped you because it was right, but we also hope that maybe someday our peoples can be friends. Friends help each other. Friends share knowledge. We would like to be friends with the Vakran." A long silence filled the room. Zelith watched Vekran carefully, wondering what the old commander would decide. The Vakran had been isolated for so long, dealing with other species only when necessary. Opening up to humans would be a major shift in policy. Finally, Vekran spoke. "Captain Grant, on behalf of the Vakran Collective, I formally accept your proposal. We will share our navigation charts, our databases, and our knowledge of this region. Furthermore, I propose that we establish formal diplomatic relations between our peoples." He paused, then continued. "But that is not all. The Vakran Collective has considerable influence in this part of the galaxy. We are members of the Galactic Council, which governs interactions between member species. I will personally sponsor humanity's introduction to the Council. With our endorsement, you will have access to trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and diplomatic channels throughout this entire sector." Grant's eyes widened. "High Commander, that is incredibly generous." "It is practical," Vekran corrected. "The galaxy needs more species like humanity. Species who help rather than exploit. Species who build bridges rather than walls. If the Council is wise, they will welcome you gladly." Grant stood and extended his hand across the table. Vekran grasped it firmly. The human gesture of respect now understood by the Vakran leader. "Thank you, High Commander," Grant said sincerely. "This is the beginning of something important. I can feel it." "As can I," Vekran agreed. The formal part of the meeting ended, but the humans and Vakran continued talking for hours. Stories were shared. Cultural information was exchanged. Friendships deepened. By the end of the day, the beginnings of a real alliance were forming. Later that evening, Zelith found Sophie on one of the station's observation decks. She was standing alone, looking out at the stars through the massive windows. Zelith approached quietly and stood beside her. "It is beautiful, is it not?" Zelith said, gesturing to the stars. "All those worlds, all those possibilities," Sophie nodded. I never get tired of looking at space. Every star could have planets. Every planet could have people. There is so much to discover out here. You know, Zalith said thoughtfully. 2 weeks ago, my people were alone in the darkness, waiting to die. We had given up hope. Then your ships appeared and everything changed. You gave us more than repairs and food. You gave us hope. You reminded us that the galaxy is not just a harsh place to survive. It can also be a place where strangers become friends. Sophie smiled. That is what exploration should be about. Not just discovering new places, but discovering new friends. What is the point of traveling to the stars if we do not connect with the people we find there? The Vakran had forgotten that, Zalith admitted. We became so focused on strength and self-reliance that we forgot about community. About helping each other. You humans showed us what we had lost. He was quiet for a moment, then continued. When I return home, I am going to recommend major changes to our policies. We cannot meet humanity and stay the same. You have challenged everything we thought we knew about how to live in this galaxy. Is that a good thing? Sophie asked. It is a very good thing, Zalith assured her. Change is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Humans have taught us that kindness is not weakness, that generosity is not foolishness, that helping others makes everyone stronger, not weaker. Sophie turned to look at him. You know, when we first detected your distress signal, some of our crew wanted to ignore it. They said we did not know you. You could be dangerous. Helping you could put us at risk. But Captain Grant said something I will never forget. He said that the kind of people we are is defined by what we do when no one is watching and there is nothing to gain. If we want to be good people, we help. That is all there is to it. Zalith felt deep respect for these small, determined beings. Your Captain Grant is very wise. He is, Sophie agreed. And he is not unique. Most humans think like he does. We look out for each other. We help strangers. It is just part of who we are. Then the galaxy is fortunate that humans have joined it, Zalith said. I suspect you will change things in ways none of us can predict yet. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Ships moved around the station, coming and going on their